My name's Justin the Clue, and I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to the Important Cinema Club. And today, we're going to have a laugh, an improvised laugh, because we're talking about Christopher Guest.
That's right, folks. You know what number this podcast goes up to? Can you guess?
No.
Can you guess?
No.
All right, hang on. I'm making this off the top of my head, too.
All right, yeah, it's improvised.
Let me just think. I don't know. Let's get back to it
later.
Yeah,
you know what? I'm sure you'll get the bit. I'm sure it's something funny related to him, but we'll get back to it. So Christopher Guest is associated with mockumentary. You can't say...
Wait, I've got 11.
Oh! Wait, why don't you just make 10 louder then?
This podcast goes to 11.
Oh, okay. Okay. So mockumentary, Christopher Guest... They go together like peanut butter and jelly, even though that when I sat down to all right, let's check out his films. Oh, he didn't actually direct that many.
Well, yes. So Christopher Guest is first and foremost known as one of the members of Spinal Tap, the fictional rock group that was the basis of the pioneering 1984 mockumentary This Is Spinal Tap, directed by Rob Reiner and largely improvised by its cast.
Have you seen the trailer for This Is Spinal Tap?
Oh, a long time ago.
Where Rob Reiner's like, "Hi, my name's Rob Reiner. I'm editing This Is Spinal Tap, and I don't have any footage for it, so here's this documentary on cheese." And then it's just footage from a cheese documentary. So good.
That's an indication of how apparently hard that movie was to sell, because I watched an interview with the Spinal Tappers this week where they were talking about how every studio turned them down. Nobody understood the concept of a mockumentary. Like, they test screened it, and the audience was like, "Why did you make a movie about such a bad band?"
I mean, isn't there a story that Aerosmith watched it? It's like, I find nothing funny about this.
Yeah. Well, apparently the cinematographer of that movie was a guy who had shot a lot of actual rock documentaries. He also shot The Killing of America, by the way.
Wow.
That's something for you, Justin. That's fun. Anyway.
Mondo.
He had shot a lot of those, rock documentaries, and when they were filming stuff, he'd say, that's not funny. That's just what they do.
Yeah, this is just another documentary, right? Like, you're just recreating stuff that actually happens.
But anyway, This Is Spinal Tap, obviously a much beloved cult hit. And then about 10 years later, Christopher Guest started his own run, films that he directed, starring some alumni of Spinal Tap, as well as some Second City people.
Wait, aren't you talking about the classic run of films that Christopher Guest made that includes Kevin Bacon in The Big Picture? Who could forget Almost Heroes?
Yes, one of Chris Farley's final films.
Yep, the film that killed Chris Farley.
That's one I've actually never seen.
No, me neither. Maybe the ghost of Farley hangs above it.
We should do a Patreon episode about that.
We should do a Patreon episode about Almost Heroes.
But anyway, the real run of canonical Christopher Guest mockumentaries begins with 1996's Waiting for Guffman, continues with 2000's Best in Show, A Mighty Wind in 2003, and then For Your Consideration in 2006, as well as the more recent film Mascots.
So the thing that it's impossible for me to get this out of my mind when I think about Christopher Guest. And it's not something that's that shocking because there's actually a section about it on his Wikipedia, but it's the fact that during the commentary for the episode where Spinal Tap appear on The Simpsons, at one point, the people doing the commentary are like, "Oh boy, this was a tough episode to do the voice recordings for because one of the actors that we had on really, he didn't want to participate in, saying the lines. He would question everything that we asked him to do. And, we don't want to say who it is, but we'll give you a guess of who it is. But, you only have one guess to figure out who, the guess that was difficult was.
Well, funnily enough, Christopher Guest is one of the few people whose Wikipedia page includes a section called
that's what I was talking about.
Off-Screen Demeanor.
Yes.
which makes the point that off-screen, Christopher Guest, though he makes you laugh in film and on television, off-screen, he is purposely not funny.
Yeah, humorless to the point of, this man seems angry.
I don't necessarily know if that's true, because I've seen interviews with him this week, and he can actually be very effortlessly funny, but he just doesn't put any effort into it,
Yeah, I remember hearing...
He's dry.
He doesn't really laugh. I read one article that said that when he laughed, it sounded like a cat, about to spit up a hairball, even though if you looked at his face, it seemed like he was enjoying what
I don't
he
think
was
I've
doing.
ever heard him laugh, actually. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't seek out Christopher Guest interviews because he's a bad interview.
But that's the classic thing, right? It's like the Mike Myers,
Peter Sellers.
Peter Sellers, is that like Johnny Depp? The classic comedians of our age is that as just regular day people, they are hollowed out. Just like, I don't want to be on, I don't want to do anything, I'm not here for your amusement.
But anyway, I wanted to do Christopher Guest this week. I suggested this topic because when I was a teenager, Christopher Guest to me represented almost the pinnacle of screen comedy.
Really?
I thought...
So it's like Marx Brothers, Guest.
Like, among modern comedy guys...
Austin Powers, Christopher Guest.
I mean, among modern comedy guys, to me, Christopher Guest, like, he was the height of sophistication and also just, like, made me laugh so much. I mean, when I was a teenager, you know, I wore out This Is Spinal Tap. And then the other movies, too. Like, I saw A Mighty Wind on opening day. I thought it was insanely funny. And I remember in 2006 going to see For Your Consideration, and it came out the week after Borat. So,
boy.
And I remember going to see Borat and actually coming out of Borat when I was 17 and thinking, will I ever laugh again? Because that movie was so funny, it may be the ultimate in comedy.
You didn't go like, oh, wow, that was funny. I can't wait for it to be blown out of the water by the next Christopher Guest film. You know what's funny is that when I saw Borat in theaters, I was like, I was expecting it to be funnier.
Wow.
I think we've had this discussion before.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we did. I mean, I genuinely
I'm like
thought...
Christopher Guest, just stone-faced. The only time, will attest to this, you ever hear me laugh is when there's a microphone or camera in front of my face. Otherwise, I'm stone-faced. No jokes.
Yeah, he just does it for a living.
And I almost speak in a whisper the entire time.
Well, yeah, I mean, Borat, I mean, I actually thought, like, I may never see anything this funny again, which shows you how myopic you are at 17.
Yes,
but anyway, I
true.
saw For Your Consideration next week, and I remember leaving it so disappointed and thinking, fuck, that's the last Christopher Guest movie we're going to get for, like, 3 years, and I didn't even like it. It'll be 6 years between good ones by the next time.
He's like a Michael Myers or Stephen Chow. Is that like, I don't understand why you can't just crank one out every year, but you know, he works at the
it's a
character.
hard process.
Yes.
It's a hard process.
I mean, because that's the thing about his movies, right, that he directs, is for people that may not be familiar with them, they are mockumentaries, so they are structured like a documentary, usually oftentimes talking to the camera. Not all of them, because And For Your Consideration is not a mockumentary, even though it's shot in like the Office style.
After seeing For Your Consideration, I don't think I saw a Christopher Guest movie again until last week.
Really? You didn't run out to see Mascots on Netflix or whatever channel it showed up on?
I watched 10 minutes of Mascots on
like, I got
Netflix, and I was like, oh, wow, the magic is gone. Yeah, I thought it was terrible what I saw.
Yeah, he lost his touch. The man who is a baron in the United Kingdom lost his touch with the people.
5th Baron Hayden Guest of the British House of Lords. His father was a British United States diplomat. So anyway, about 2 weeks ago, my girlfriend and I, when we were looking for something to watch during the long process of negotiation to try to find something that would satisfy both our moods that night, eventually settled on Best in Show on a streaming service. We watched it, and I found it pleasant. I found it very easy to watch, and I almost never laughed at it. I found it like amusing throughout, and I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed all the actors, but I didn't belly laugh at all.
I would say the exact same thing when I watched Best in Show, and as well when I watched Waiting for Guffman, which I don't know why I didn't see it when I was a teenager, but I remember reading reviews of people being like, this is the funniest movie ever made.
I was one of those people as a teenager who thought that movie was insanely funny. So having watched Best in Show again, I wanted to go on a journey with Christopher Guest. I wanted to revisit these movies and think, because I kind of liked watching Best in Show. I liked the pleasant feeling of it. I liked seeing those people. I wanted to spend more time in that world. But I also wanted to understand, why was I not laughing at this as much as I used to?
I mean, there's not big jokes in it, I guess. Like, that's the thing I was thinking when I saw Waiting for Guffman, which is I'm like, wow, this is it's a pleasant experience, but I was reading reviews on Letterboxd. People are like, I've never laughed louder in the first 30 minutes than I have in any other movie. And I'm like, really?
Yeah. So let's start though with This Is Spinal Tap, because This Is Spinal Tap, which I had not seen since I was in high school. I wore it out in high school. Okay. I still remembered almost every beat.
So it was like a Monty Python and the Holy Grail style movie for you? Because that, like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, I knew that by heart.
Yeah, it was very much like that. I found watching it again this week that, like, I don't know, I felt a little melancholy feeling of being like, oh yeah, I still know all these jokes. Like when the guy goes through the metal detector in the airport and he's got the cucumber in his crotch.
The guy, that's Harry Shearer, Mr. Burns and Smithers himself.
Yes, excuse me. Is it Nigel Tufnell is his character?
I don't remember what his character's name is.
But anyway, I saw that and I thought, oh yeah, I know this whole joke, so I'm just going to see the whole joke.
Yeah, that was a joke that they would show at, that big, what channel did the top 100 comedies?
Yeah.
And they show like that, and then, Some Like It Hot, of course, the funniest film of all time at number 1.
But I still love This Is Spinal Tap. I still think it's a great movie, and by far the greatest movie that I saw this week.
Oh, yeah, I think Spinal Tap is not one that I watched endlessly as a kid, even though seemingly every, friend's dad had that DVD on their shelf. You're not allowed to be a dad.
The DVD that had the commentary by Spinal Tap.
Yeah, in character, yes.
So, for those who aren't familiar, just for the sake of formality, I will say what the movie is about. The movie poses as a documentary of a British rock band known as Britain's loudest band, Spinal Tap. They were not always a heavy metal band. They started as a hippy-dippy flower power group. Before that, they were kind of like early Beatles. But then eventually, cravenly, they turned into a heavy metal band because they are bad. They are very derivative. They follow whatever trends are going on at that moment. They're very stupid.
The way you described it, it sounds like there is almost like a thoughtfulness behind the music that they're making, because you get the sense they genuinely enjoy what they're doing, that there isn't a cravenness to it, like an exploitative element, in that where they ended up, maybe they are following trends, is something that was organic to their journey and that they enjoyed this kind of stuff. And I think that's very important about, the Christopher Guest movies that work for me, is that they need to be kind of centered in something real. And that if it's not, then it doesn't work. Like, even Best in Show, the dog show is something real. The dogs are real. They are not a joke. They will always be dogs.
And just all the details of the dog show, it feels like a lived-in world. It feels like this is what a dog show actually is.
And This Is Spinal Tap has the music, which sounds like real music you would find on record. Some of it is great, and there's a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, the music in This Is Spinal Tap is such an incredible achievement because the songs are both bad and catchy.
Yes, very catchy. Who didn't have Guitar Hero and played? Because it was the easiest one.
For 20 years, I've been humming Sex Farm and Big Bottom and all those stupid songs.
Big Bottom, I'm like, wait, that was a Queen song too, wasn't it? Yeah.
Talk about bum cakes, my girl's got 'em. I know, it's
so good. I mean, the movie knows it. They play those songs in their entirety.
Yeah, and like the songs, the fucking songs work, and the lyrics work. They're stupid.
But they're not either like a joke. Like, if you play, this is the thing about This Is Spinal Tap that makes it work as well as it does, is that when you watch it, you go, oh, if you showed this entire film to someone and they, for some reason, had never heard Spinal Tap, they would assume it was a real documentary.
Yeah, it's the only one of these movies that actually really looks real.
Yes, because there's nothing that even pushes it too far into like, oh, okay, none of them are being, attacked by a gorilla in a cage.
Right.
Or anything like that. Like, even just the conversation they have at Elvis's grave, they'll try to sing the song.
Oh man, that's so funny.
Or where they talk about the cover and they're like, oh, well, the difference is he's the one that's being tortured on it. It's like, oh,
there's such a thin line between clever and stupid. I mean, getting back to what you were saying about how real the movie seems, learning about the process by which these movies are made this week, I found that before they made the movie, they rigorously collaborated on what is the life story of Spinal Tap, what are all the albums, where did everyone come from, how did they meet, and you can really feel that. One of the things that's so exciting about the movie is you feel there is this whole world that you're only getting the tip of the iceberg of. There's a bit early on when Rob Reiner, as the director, is interviewing them about some of the reviews that their albums have got, and you see various album covers, Shark Sandwich, The Gospel According to Spinal Tap, and you think, I wonder what songs are on that. They actually feel like albums that might exist in the world.
And the improvisations in the movie, especially when you're looking for it, it feels so natural that you can feel them building off each other in some moments, like when they're talking about drummers, and you can tell they're making it up as they're going along, where they're like, oh yeah, he just exploded. It's like there was...
People spontaneously combust every year, they just don't report.
Oh wait, but there was a little bit something left. Like you can see them playing each other, like that's the game of the scene, where they're like a little bit green stuff.
Or the other one where they're like, well, the official explanation was that he choked on vomit. And the other one says, they don't know whose vomit it was.
Yes. Like, that's so funny. And I mean, of course, like this movie, I think there was like something like hundreds of hours that they shot to get to this point. And I was surprised reading about it today that like the core of it that gives it a backbone was added in the middle of shooting, because they were like, we need to give this some kind of structure. So like there was no girlfriend character that came in.
Interesting.
And I feel like that really helps this movie in a way that like Waiting for Guffman does not have that kind of element. Like there's no goals that they're doing. And at the same time, and this is Spinal Tap, there's also the downward trajectory of the characters as they sink lower and lower, like playing at an army base. And everyone's like, it's too loud.
Fred Willard as the guy at the army base is so fucking funny, where he says like, oh, we're so happy to have you here. We're such fans of the music. Not your music specifically, but rock music in general.
I mean, let's say right here, Fred Willard is the MVP of all of these movies, right?
So when I say that I didn't laugh all that much at these later ones, Fred Willard is accepted from that. I still laugh.
What happened?
I don't think so.
So good. But yeah, so this is Spinal Tap. I mean, we could continue about like why it's funny. The fact that like in the opening scenes, they all have cold sores on their mouth. Did you notice that?
Well, that's an example of like the very subtle jokes that are throughout the movie, where it's not at all, no attention is...
They're massive cold sores on their face.
Attention is not called to it. Nobody mentions it. It's just...
just in passing. And it's just every little thing. It's really funny how much it came to define, you know, just the idea of rock band. Like, this is Spinal Tap, just set in cement, like, this is what a lame rock band looks like.
Well, I think about it every time I see, like, in the documentary Decline of Western Civilization Part 2, there's that band Ovid. Do you remember Ovid?
In the hot tub?
Yeah, who are like the shittiest band in the movie, and they're such tryhards, and you can't watch them without thinking about Spinal Tap.
Yeah, or the whole scene where they're walking around being like, hello, Cleveland.
Yeah.
You turn yourselves around. Supposedly that is from a real rock documentary where like a band can't find where to go and they end up in a tennis court. They're like, how do we get here? Which is very funny.
So 10 years go by, Christopher Guest makes The Big Picture, which I saw a long time ago.
Fine.
Yeah, it's a showbiz satire.
Yeah, it's like everyone in Hollywood's laughing about it, but the thing about The Big Picture, which I love, is the opening sequence, which is at a short film festival, which understands so perfectly the lame short films that film students make. Like, there's one where it's a Napoleon film, big giant budget, stars the guy who directed it. Another one is just filled with camera tricks, where it's like, the killer was you! And there's like a Hitchcock zoom in, zoom out, just crazy camera moves. And then like the silly, like Kevin Bacon, like Tim Burton one. And the fact that everybody at that short film contest, they're all like, and you just did it with your own money. And there's jokes about like, and I'd like to thank my family trust. Or what he's like, it's my agent's son. Thanks so much for making that. That's a short film.
So for the most part, The Big Picture is about Kevin Bacon as this young filmmaker who's trying to make a movie in the Hollywood studio system. And he wants to make a personal film, a film that's in black and white and it's set in a cabin.
I gotta say, that film that he wants to make sounds boring as hell.
Well, that's where you and Christopher Guest part company, because this is an example of, Hollywood wants to make it craven. They want to constantly compromise at every point. My memory of The Big Picture, which I liked when I saw it when I was 15 and haven't seen it since, but I remember that there were some weird tonal things. Like Martin Short shows up as like a very comical agent.
Well, Kevin Bacon also has like fantasies of I'm
like
in Casablanca and something that does not work at all.
And isn't there kind of like a sexy fantasy that he has about
later on? Because he leaves his like small town girlfriend to move in with a craven Hollywood hussy. So,
right.
Yeah, it just doesn't really work. It's just very kind of like by the numbers, and it's not playing to Christopher Guest's strengths really.
So 1996, Waiting for Guffman. This is the first mockumentary, which I understand is a term that he doesn't like.
No, because he likes to say that I'm not mocking these characters, I'm just exploring these little facets. And I gotta say, he's laughing at most of these characters.
Yeah, come on.
Like, there's not much of a kind of emotional backbone to them.
Waiting for Guffman is set in the small town of Blaine, which is famous for two things. The fact that President McKinley stopped there and paid a compliment to the stools there.
Yeah.
And so it became the stool capital of America.
Best joke of the movie.
And then about 60 years later, aliens supposedly landed there before Roswell.
Yes. I mean, that's a funny joke, especially when it comes back in the play that they're doing.
Yeah.
Waiting for Guffman, Christopher Guest is at the center of it.
He plays Corky St. Clair, who is
the inspiration Christopher the Tiger King.
That's right. He's a theater impresario from New York who seems to have failed out of New York, and now he's in Blaine trying to rebuild his career, and he is tasked with, oh, and by the way, he's evidently gay, although he says that he has a wife.
The joke is that no one has ever seen, and I think one character at one point goes, maybe that's why he's so like stressed out all the time, is that his wife, they're just not connecting, because I've never seen her.
But anyway, he's been tasked with directing the big stage musical, the not very big, the community theater musical that will commemorate the town's 150th anniversary.
So the big issue I have with this is like, the second half is the musical, and it's not good. Like, it's not even good to the point of, oh, I could understand why they would think it was good and fun. Even though I do enjoy how the town loves the musical, they could not get enough of it. Like, it's not a thing where they're setting them up to fail in front of an audience. Like, the town and the people know what Christopher Guest's character will put on stage, and they love it.
I don't know if I completely agree. Like, I think the musical works well enough because, like, I've been to community theater. I've been to, school plays and stuff that are, like, shitty, and you've got a character like the Eugene Levy dentist character who is obviously not convincing as a prospector.
I agree,
but you get that in community theater.
If it was just pushed a little further, because like the idea of like, oh, a Broadway person is going to come and see us, even if that person did come, it would end in failure, right?
It's unrealistic that anybody would think that this show would get picked up for Broadway, just for the basic reason that it's
about the town.
It's about the town of Blaine.
No plot.
Yeah.
And I think it's charming when you watch it, but I just wish, because like it doesn't have that Spinal Tap style, like, oh, okay, you could show this to someone and they'd be like, oh, I understand. It feels almost too jokey.
I felt it was maybe, if anything, a little too gentle. I didn't laugh uproariously a lot. I thought it was funny. I mean, okay, it's hard to talk about comedy a little bit because so much of it is just going to be me saying like, I didn't find it all that funny.
I mean, the one big scene in this movie is Guest character asking for $100,000 and he gives this big long speech.
I mean, to me, that was the funniest part where he's like, and I hate you people because you're bastard people.
Yes, that's the best part.
Or I liked it later on when he yells at somebody, I hate you and I hate your ass face. Mm-hmm. There were certain scenes in this movie, the Christopher Guest movies all have, for me now, these long stretches where somebody will be going off on a riff that I think just absolutely like clunks. Mm-hmm. And in this one, for example, the scene where Fred Willard and his wife, Catherine O'Hara, are out for dinner with Eugene Levy and Linda Cash, and they go off on this riff about how Fred Willard has had a penis reduction surgery.
Yeah.
I found that brutally unfunny this time.
I found it amusing, but that's what I mean by like the too jokey. Like you're pushing it too far.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's not realistic.
Yes.
When it's a mockumentary, quote unquote, realism matters a lot. There's a scene, I'm getting ahead of myself, but in A Mighty Wind, where Jane Lynch, as one of the folk singers, is going off on this monologue about her career before she was in the band. And she talks about how she was a porn star. And she goes on and on about this. And she's like, and then in my last film, Not So Tiny Tim, I learned how to play the flute. And I found it kind of brutally unfunny because if you're not on board, first of all, it doesn't make sense that somebody would be talking this like openly about it in a documentary like this about folk music. Like the logic of it doesn't work. But even if it did, sorry, I don't find it all that funny that somebody used to be a porn star.
Yeah, because you're mocking them, right? It's like, I can't believe you did this pornography. That's what the joke is.
Yeah, and it's like, maybe grow up. Like, what, you've never seen pornography? It's like, it's not all that taboo, frankly.
I mean, because isn't that one of the issues with Waiting for Guffman is that, like, a lot of the joke isn't Christopher Guest and he's acting gay?
Yeah, I mean, I think it works a bit in Waiting for Guffman just because that character is so defiantly himself.
Yes, and that he doesn't compromise in who he is when he does it. Which is why I think that one of the issues I had with the movie is that it ends so bitterly that you're like, I guess that's it.
Okay, I actually like the ending of the movie because if there's one thing that I ultimately like about Waiting for Guffman, it's that the characters, not everything they do is realistic, but where they come from and where they end up is realistic. And I think the movie has some great empathy for them. Like Parker Posey is the young woman who works for Dairy Queen. And at one point she says, well, there's always a home for me at Dairy Queen. And she says it very optimistically, but it's actually crushingly sad the way she says it.
Just crushingly sad at the end. And all of his docs, Waiting for Guffman onward, do have those epilogue moments, which are often, well, except for A Mighty Wind, but we all know what we're talking about there.
Oh, yes. Well, okay, A Mighty Wind, which is my second favorite after Spinal Tap.
Because it's the music. Because the music feels, authentic. That, like, they did go and they opened for Spinal Tap as that band, and you would buy it.
A Mighty Wind is about folk music, and it's about these three folk bands or three folk outfits who reunite when a big record producer, the record producer who made them all briefly stars, dies, and they reunite for a benefit concert. It's the Folksmen, played by the three Spinal Tappers, Mitch and Mickey, a estranged sort of almost Sonny and Cher type duo played by Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara.
Eugene Levy's performance is so funny.
And Catherine O'Hara is amazing too, as sort of a Joan Baez type. You know, she's excellent. And funniest of all is the New Main Street Singers, which are not a band of 9 people, one of whom is from
Beach
the old.
Boys. That's basically the joke.
One of whom is from the old Main Street Singers, but the band has basically been taken over by these young frauds, and it's this incredibly commercial bastardization. But what I think is so clever and brilliant about A Mighty Wind is that all 3 of the bands, like the New Main Street Singers, are the most commercial of them all, but all 3 of the bands are shit.
Oh, I like their music.
Well, I like it too, but they're all 3 of them commercial bastardizations of whatever folk music.
Yeah, they're not Woody Guthrie walking around with his 6-string playing songs about revolution.
But they're not.
No, they're not.
They're the Folksmen, and they're playing, Eat at Joe's.
Yeah, it's all the old songs that they're playing over and over and over again too. It's like they're caught in like a nostalgia wheel that they'll never escape from.
And it's funny that the Folksmen so resent the New Main Street Singers as being like hacky and commercial, because it's like, you guys are so hacky and commercial, unlike us. Like we're the real folk music. But the thing is, the New Main Street Singers are worse than them.
But they're not real folk music either.
Yeah,
they're people that want to watch them. They don't want to listen to that.
They're both bad, but they're just different levels of bad.
But those songs are fun to listen to.
I love the songs.
But I'm trying to think, like, that movie. I'm like, what are the big laughs of it? Like, I feel like
what happened?
Yeah, Fred Willard. He's the best part of that movie.
Fred Willard is so funny. But aside from that, I mean, I was compelled by it. I loved all the details. I loved all the album covers, and I loved all the performances, and the dramatic story between Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara I thought was very beautifully handled. I didn't laugh that much.
No, yeah, me neither. Especially when you think of, like, This Is Spinal Tap. And is it just Spinal Tap gave them a jumping off point of these dumb characters that, like, it just worked so well, and the verisimilitude of it just popped off screen, and that you can never really recreate that again?
Do you think a lot of it has to do with how overdone the mockumentary form has been since these came out?
Maybe. And I also think that, like, especially in the Christopher Guest directed movies, is that the plots are either not dramatically kind of compelling enough or not biting enough. Like, there's no real satire to them.
If there's something I like about these movies, it's that they have this, they do a tricky balancing act of making fun of the characters while also sort of loving them and their world.
No, I agree.
Because, like, the Folksmen, those 3 guys, Guest, McKean, and Shearer, clearly love folk music, and they love having an opportunity to play folk music.
Yeah, like, they love it. Like,
even though it's bad. Yeah, and they love it
it's
because
not bad.
it's...
Well, if you enjoy it, there's no such thing as guilty pleasures.
And they agree.
What real folk music you listen to? Don't tell me Bob Dylan.
Hang on, Bob Dylan and...
Gotcha.
Yeah.
The Folksmen.
Yeah, the Folksmen. I never claimed to be folk music fan number 1, okay?
Let's get to For Your Consideration, because this is like the nadir. Well, mascots, but I feel like that doesn't exist because nobody talks about it.
Yeah, it's the nadir that I've seen from beginning to end.
Yes. So, For Your Consideration.
So this is about the making of a Hollywood prestige drama called Home for Purim.
Yeah, so, I mean, the first issue with this film is that the movie they're making is not a real movie. It feels like an SNL sketch, and if you don't have that basis, and you see clips from the movie, and it's like, yeah, it feels like Christopher Guest shot it on, it just looks cheap. It doesn't work.
You're right, it doesn't feel real. Look at what was winning Oscars at that time.
Like, the moment that I think about from For Your Consideration is one where Catherine O'Hara's talking to a guy.
John Michael Higgins as the publicist, right?
No, not John Michael Higgins. That's a very funny scene where she says, I heard a rumor on the internet. And he's like, the internet? That's the thing with email, right?
Yeah, and okay, I have a problem with that, though, because a publicist would know what the internet is. I'm sorry.
No, it's a scene where she's talking to like a PA and she forgets his name and he's like, oh no, that's not my name. She's like, I've been calling you that all day. Like, that feels like a real scene. Yeah. And like they walk away and there's like a border between them and she's like, oh, see you later. Wait, are you still there? He's like, yeah, I'm still here. Like, that's funny. That feels real.
But it doesn't make sense that halfway through the production, the studio head played by Ricky Gervais comes in and is like, can we turn it into Home for Thanksgiving?
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
I mean, a funny joke that Catherine O'Hara dedicates herself to is she has like crazy plastic surgery for the back half of the movie.
Yeah, that's funny.
But like, it's like, I don't care about any of the characters. It's like, why do I care if Catherine O'Hara wins an Oscar?
It doesn't ring true the way the Oscar campaign happens, where just like some magical oracle, some guy in a message board says this has Oscar buzz, and then the studio is like, oh, did you hear that? It has Oscar buzz. Somebody else says it has Oscar buzz. The studio is always involved in engineering this.
I mean, that's how The Big Picture ends too, which is like everybody wants to get Kevin Bacon, but he's on a vacation, and because they can't get hold of him, his value goes up higher and higher and higher.
This sounds like nitpicking, I'm sure, but the details actually matter when you're making a satire like this. The details are the reason A Mighty Wind works. They're the reason this is Spinal Tap works. But I mean, again, I only saw 10 minutes of Mascots, but I don't think Christopher Guest has spent any time in the world of mascots.
You know what the funniest part for consideration is? Fred Willard. I don't
Of
know
course.
if you remember him, but he's like a E.T. style host where like he often doesn't even know where he is. And he's like, we can cut that out, right? And then it like fades to something else.
That's funny. And his co-host as the Mary Hart type is Jane Lynch, and she does this like really funny like stand. Like,
Yes.
you remember that?
I love the Fred Willard character because, I mean, it would make no sense that he's on this show. He has his hair like in a mohawk the entire time.
That movie, For Your Consideration, has the problem that these movies increasingly had, where by this point, Christopher Guest's rep company had become so big that everybody had to have something to do. And there are certain dead-end bits, like there was a Siskel and Ebert parody in there where it's like not very funny. And it's like, okay, this is just here so that these two guys who are in all the other movies can be in this one too.
For a guy that essentially people associate with the mockumentary, it's weird that like his filmography, as we talked about it, has basically gone, well, it's not as good as This Is Spinal Tap, which Christopher Guest did not direct. That's a Rob Reiner film.
Many people love the ones that came after, and I did once too.
People are already writing angry emails being like, you just don't get the heart of Waiting for Guffman. That's why you aren't laughing as hard as Will was when he was a teenager. He has been bitter and hardened throughout his life.
If Christopher Guest were here right now, I'd shake his hand and tell him I admire his work.
And he'd probably look at you stone-faced, would turn around and leave.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you have any letters, you can send them to us at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. And our first letter is from Kevin Barr, and it goes, hey, Justin and Will, and the subject is how to be a film school TA. Fell in love with the podcast this past summer, and it quickly became the first podcast I've ever followed on Patreon. I love your willingness to touch seemingly any topic and try to find the art in it. Hell, I first started listening after I heard about the Something Weird episode. Wait, this reminds me, this is off topic, but I read that Christopher Guest in an interview say, how can anyone like the Three Stooges? Who wants to watch three grown men hurt each other?
Okay, fuck that guy. I take back anything I said nice about him.
The letter continues.
You know who makes me laugh is the Three Stooges.
I'm starting graduate school this fall, and I've heard you guys crack a ton of jokes about Film 101 classes and share your thoughts on how film school was disappointing to you.
Hang on, I just want to say that I had a lot of good experiences in film school. I don't want to, if any of my former professors are listening, which they're not.
No, there's no way.
I just want to say that there were many things I learned and liked. But you know, when I'm here with Justin, what do we want to do? We want to razz the funnier elements.
And the letter continues, I'm going to be a TA for an intro to film class in a couple of weeks and wanted to know, what is it that you wish you could have gotten out of a Film 101 course? The professor who developed the course is required to only teach aesthetics rather than historical or social context. Ugh.
That sounds very out of fashion. That doesn't sound like... Anyway, go ahead.
So the syllabus skews. How can you talk about just aesthetics without connecting it to the context?
I mean, today's Zoomers, all they want to do is talk about the social, historical stuff.
You know that this professor probably has been there for like 40 years and he's been teaching the same thing.
Week 1, Birth of a Nation, a masterpiece of form.
So the syllabus skews very heavy on modern films to demonstrate film techniques and styles, with an obligatory screening of Citizen Kane thrown in as well. I love Wells, but I hear a lot of these intro students hate watching it. If you have any advice on what kind of a leader I should be for this class, I would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks, Kevin.
Well, I remember when I started Intro to Cinema 101, whenever it was, in first year university, I remember the professor, who is a very good professor, saying, this is not a film appreciation class. There are films that you won't like here, some maybe even violently so. That's okay. We can talk about that. I thought in some ways that was a decent introduction, but then in other ways, I kind of wish it was a film appreciation class.
Yeah.
Like people learn better when they appreciate.
I would say if it's a film 101 course, give me the stuff you appreciate to give me a baseline of where I can then jump off into other stuff. All right, kids, let's sit and watch The Bicycle Thieves for the second class. Like, ugh.
But I mean, there's a way to make The Bicycle Thieves come alive.
It is, but it isn't the same canned response that they're delivering to a class of 1,000 people.
I mean, I remember the week that we spent on experimental film, they showed us a few clips of Stan Brackage's The Act of Seeing with One's Own Eyes, which of course was not a crowd pleaser.
Yes.
And Paul Scherritz's Touching, which is really not a crowd pleaser. That's one that is strobe lighting and just abrasive audio, someone going touching, and like in the strobe lighting and colors, an image of a man like with his tongue between two scissors that looks like, like kind of like the cunnilingus, the thing. And the class hated it. And honestly, looking back, I think there's a way to make that come alive.
I agree. Did he just kind of show it or dryly present it and then he screened it?
Kind of. And like that's such a kind of like, now I'm going to sound like an old man saying this, but that sounds like such a punk rock movie to make. Mm-hmm. It's such an abrasive thing to do that there's a way to make that come alive for a young, angry audience. I don't know.
I mean, we're not Zoomers, so we can't speak of their Minecraft and their other stuff, whatever their points of interest are. But I would say that, I mean, and this is a TA as well, so he doesn't have control over the course that he's teaching, is that try to find a reason to be passionate about the thing that you're talking about and try to involve the audience. Do not ask them historical questions and hope that someone answers. I was a kid that never liked to be asked upon during any class because I'm like, I'm going to get the wrong answer. Please don't ask me. So there's a way to go about that and to ingratiate yourself without like turning your chair backwards and being like, all right, let's wrap.
You're right. Try to find what you love in the thing and then try to communicate that love.
And, if they can see that passion, I mean, not all of them will. It's a Film 101 class. Some of them are taking it because it had film in the title. Like, this will be easy. This is what I'll take. You will never communicate with those children. Forget them. They're at the bottom of the well.
Too bad.
But some people will be like, oh, I never thought about it this way. I mean, Citizen Kane, the fact that there's some kids that hate it, even the kids that hate it, I feel like there's a way to get in on them, even if it's just like, look at this opening shot. Look how crazy it is and how practically it was done.
Look how amazing it is that in that newsreel, he tells the entire story of the movie before he starts it. Mm-hmm. Imagine what it was like in 1941 to see this story told out of order in this way, with these contradicting points of view.
That opening scene, you know what kids love, or what I love hearing, is like stuff I didn't notice when you saw the movie the first time, that it just kind of passed you by. Like that opening scene where they're all watching that newsreel, like all their faces are in darkness. You don't really see who's talking.
Kane's mother's boarding house, where the camera goes from one end of the room to the other end of the room. And if you listen to the Roger Ebert commentary track, you know that the top hat that's on the table shakes in a weird way. And that's because
it's breaking apart.
Because the table came together after the camera went through it. I mean, that's amazing. I'm getting excited thinking about it.
How can you not like Citizen Kane when you can talk about... Because, like... as Film 101 people, something really that's easy to grab onto is the practical way that something is put together. When you explain it to somebody like that, it's like, oh, it's a puzzle. Almost everybody loves to have puzzles explained to them, and that you realize how the puzzle was made.
Or for God's sakes, just say that Citizen Kane, he made it as this movie about this real newspaper baron who tried to have it banned. Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. And tell them, too, that it was the inspiration for their favorite new movie, Mank.
I really hope there's like Mank heads that are like, Mank's better than Citizen Kane. Really hope that I meet some of those people, then I turn around and walk away, Christopher Guest style. So yeah, there's, I think, a lot of ways to talk about this kind of stuff. I think passion is probably the most important thing. When I think of the film TAs I had, it's a guy that's probably been a graduate student for too long, sitting in a chair, just burned out, doesn't want to talk to the kids, not passionate about anything that he's doing. So I think that's the one thing.
Don't be that. Yeah, be like us.
Yeah, passionate. This is what you do as a TA. We've talked about almost every movie they'll probably cover. You just sit back, you queue up our episode, you turn it on, leave the room.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you very much for that letter. And what are we doing on our Patreon this week, Will?
This week, we are talking about The Muppets, specifically their 1979 classic, The Muppet Movie.
Yeah! I mean, we've never talked about the Muppets before, shockingly, even though people have demanded it.
Which Muppet are we each the most attracted to? We answer.
Is there a long conversation about Muppet anatomy? And by that I mean swinging frog dick? Of course there is.
Come on, folks.
So you can check that out at patreon.com/theimportantcinemaclub. $5 a month will get you every episode. So what are we doing next week, Will?
Next week, speaking of anatomy,
I was going to lead with that, but I was like, I'll leave that open for Will.
we are heading back into the trash. That's right. We are talking about another psychotronic cult hero, one of the faces on the Mount Rushmore of the trash heap. We're talking about Russ Meyer.
Woo! Russ Meyer himself.
Yeah, king of the tits.
Yep. Super Vixens, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Faster Pussycat Kill Kill.
What a filmography that man. Mudhoney, that man had.
The Immoral Mr. T. So we should talk about Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, I think. What else should we talk about?
Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Sure.
Do you want to? There's so many I want to talk about because. Can we squeeze in the one non-erotic film that he did, like the studio picture? Have you seen it?
No, I don't really want to.
But you got it. Like, that's the one, right? And that's the one that, like, everybody says, like, it doesn't work, but the editing is so hyperactive to the point of, like, you've never seen a movie cut like this.
Yeah, wouldn't you rather watch Mudhoney, though?
Yeah, I would. But
I know, let's talk about it. Like, maybe you can persuade me.
We have to get the different facets. I mean, we'll talk about Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, which is probably his most popular film.
The one that's most available, too,
exactly.
yeah.
Because, I mean, we'll talk about it in the episode, but is his... I'm putting it in air quotes, widow still around and holding on to all of his pictures?
I didn't know if he had a widow or not.
Well, there was a woman in his life that took control of his estate, and yeah. Oh, you have definitely not read the final chapters of the Russ Meyer biography because, whoo boy, it goes into late period Ed Wood territory.
I read that book in 2007, I want to say, so I've almost completely forgotten about it. What I do remember about that book is that he came off as a pretty unpleasant guy.
Yes, and that like near the end of his life, he was out of it, and there were some people controlling his life, and that he mostly centered himself on publishing his biography, and by that I mean making sure the margins were correct and the spacing between words, which he became obsessed with.
And the man really did love tits. I mean,
loved tits.
It was not an act.
That,
it was the
no.
central fact of his life, it seems.
But also his visual style, which is very specific. But you know what? We're getting too far. We're going to be talking about that next week. So until then, my name's Justin Klune.
I'm Will Sloan.
Thanks for listening. We interrupt this program briefly to thank some of our new Patreon subscribers, who include Michael Heisler, Jacob Forster, Benjamin Mulvey, Ken Nichols, Jordy Matheson, Alex Ross, J.R. Scully, John Petrovic, Benjamin J. Hedrick, Michael Keane, Alexander Ross, Chris Dunn, Hugo Poderesso, Danny Ramone, John Abel, Andrew Kraigbaum, Jeroen Kron, Meg, David Bertrand, Felix Dembinski, Carly Martin, Liam Rennie, Lyle Tyler, and Jack English. Thank you very much for becoming patrons. We could not do this without you. And the person listening to this, if you have not reviewed us on Apple Podcasts, please do so. We would really appreciate it. It helps us find a bigger audience. And finally, I'd like to thank everyone that helped with the Gold Ninja video fundraiser. I am so excited with the things that I'll be able to do thanks to all of your contributions. But more on that next week. And with that, I now return you to your regular scheduled programming.
Well, I blew some money recently.
A lot of money. I've been there.
Yeah, some money on some stuff. You know, irresponsible, honestly.
Wait, did you order it from the website that I sent to you?
Yes, I did.
Which is like, you look at that website and you're like, is this real? Like, is this like a GeoCities page of some kind?
Really, taking my life into my hands ordering from this website, but you had done it first.
I had done it first. I had, rolled that Magnum, put it to my temple.
So Justin sent me this German DVD Blu-ray website.
You're saying it like I'm giving you heroin, and I'm like, here, Will, free taste. You reached out to me and asked for it.
Well, you had told me about it before.
Yeah, like a year ago.
And ever since then, it had been like nagging me. And then I would see these things on your shelf, and I'd be like, I need it, I want it. And so I asked you, and then it's the site where you can get a bunch of what they call German media books.
Oh, they look so good.
It's just a fancy packaging, folks.
But it's such fancy packaging, and they're all like different media books. I don't know which ones. I got big ones. I got little ones.
They're beautiful.
Yeah,
they're beautiful. But what really matters is they had a lot of movies that are not easily available here, not even online.
Yeah,
easily
no,
available.
they're not available because sometimes they're very limited runs as well. Yeah. So like, because we're about to talk about Bruceploitation films, but I don't know which company in Germany has a giant vault of these pristine prints. Like, they're there, I guess, and they're scanning them and putting them on DVD and sometimes Blu-ray, but they only come out in Germany, and you can only buy them from this very suspect website.
Yeah, so like a few months ago on like German Amazon, I got this Blu-ray of Enter the Game of Death starring Bruce Lee, and it's beautiful, thing of beauty. I've never seen the movie look so good. And then I went to this sketchy German website, which actually isn't sketchy at all.
It's not. It's official.
Yeah, it's
and,
legit.
Like, the company that does a bunch of... They did, like, some Godfrey Ho stuff. They do Marshall. They do Shaw Brothers stuff now, too.
Right.
They sell, I think, only through that website, pretty much.
So there's nothing sketchy about it, but it is in German, so it can be hard to navigate.
I mean, I think... Is there an English option you can switch, or do you have to go through Google Translate?
I go through Google Translate, yeah. I didn't see an English option
And
if
the
there was
issue,
one.
too, is all of these Bruceploitation films, you're like, is it the movie that I want?
Well, yeah, because they have German titles, and so I'm Googling, and I'm like, oh, is it that one? And, you know...
And not only that, the covers do not help either.
The covers just have Bruce Lee's name on them.
Yeah, sometimes Jackie Chan's on the cover, and Bruce Lee's name is on it.
So, Bruceploitation movies, if you're listening to us for the first time, those are... I'm conscious about being accessible.
Yes. Every episode of the Important Cinema Club is the first episode of the Important Cinema Club. Enough said, yeah.
Bruceploitation movies are the Bruce Lee ripoff movies that were made after he died, starring people like Bruce Lee, Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
You know, so
and there's a million of them.
Yeah.
Millions.
And I ordered a bunch of these in beautiful widescreen because I grew up watching these movies in shitty pan and scan prints. And the thought of seeing the image of Bruce Lee in widescreen is so exciting.
I should say as well is that these kind of German releases were the inspiration for Gold Ninja Video because Will had a bunch of limited editions, and I was like, this is doable. And they had like a little numbered thing on the back, and I was like, yeah, I could do that. And I think I also took, because they were like a solid color and the poster in the middle as well, which is why the Gold Ninja Video one looked like that as well.
Anyway, yeah, I ordered it, and then like I messed up the order. Like I forgot to pay. There's a credit card. This is boring, but there's a credit card option.
Oh, well, I gotta say, it's very frustrating. Yeah. Like, they don't take PayPal or like anything like that.
So I ended up corresponding with them. Like,
I did the same thing.
Oh
too.
yeah, feeding into Google Translate.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, so then I sent them this.
What is this? 1990? We're like sending money orders.
I know. I sent a money order to some German bank for this, or an Austrian bank actually, to this like quite a bit of money, and I thought, I mean that huge amount of money I just spent I may never see it again.
And no matter how many discs you order as well, you know what? I'm going to put the website in the description of this if people want to check it out, because it's not like on the dark web or anything like that, but it's also like flat shipping, which is like, huh? Like no matter what you order, it's like one flat fee.
But anyway, 3 weeks later, they did arrive.
It got so fast too. I got them.
Yeah, so I was really happy to get it. So yeah, I had a Bruceploitation triple bill a few nights ago. I had such a great time. I started with...
we got to talk as well that these German releases, it's just essentially a surprise bag. You open up the disc, sometimes there's a second DVD, and you're like, it's in German, I don't know what this movie is.
Yeah, they come with a second DVD that sometimes has a whole other movie.
Yeah.
And one of them had a bonus disc that was one of the movies I bought. So it's like, oh, I could have saved that one. But then...
that other one had a different bonus disc.
It did have a different bonus disc that I didn't buy, so it all evened out at the end. So yeah, I watched Bruce Lee against Superman, which is an early Bruce Lee movie. Pretty wacky, pretty wild. Had a great time. Then I threw on the image of Bruce Lee with Bruce Lee. Had a great time with that. And then I watched one of many Bruce Lee biopics called, I've forgotten what it's called, The Dragon Lives, also known as He's a Legend, He's a Hero.
No, I don't think I've ever seen that one. Who starred in that one?
That was Bruce Lee. And I'd never seen it either. And after I watched it, I decided to like figure out, okay, how many Bruce Lee biopics was this guy in? Because between 1974 and 1976, he made 5 Bruce Lee biopics. Okay, and 4 of them were in 1976. Can you imagine making 4 Bruce Lee biopics in 1976?
I can't.
Just doing that same story over and over again.
But he must not. They must have like shot simultaneously, and he doesn't know what's happening. Like,
there's a baffling scene halfway through The Dragon Lives. Again, this is the Bruce Lee story from beginning to end, but halfway through, he just has a mustache for a few scenes. And
maybe he came off a different set.
Maybe, like, he's filming Fist of Fury. He's filming the iconic dojo fight from Fist of Fury.
He's got a mustache.
And he's got a mustache. It's like, guys, why does he have a mustache in this scene and no other scenes?
How has there not been a company that's done a Bruceploitation? We've talked about this before. We've heard rumors that Severin was working on it like a couple years ago.
If I were to speculate, I would say elements are an issue because the negatives, if they exist, are in Taiwan.
Just release the Grindhouse version. People who are buying Bruceploitation box sets we'll take battered prints as long as they're in widescreen.
I also think possibly music rights are an issue because all of these movies.
I know, but I feel like companies like The Sword and the Claw, the act for release, has like Star Wars music in it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, shh, like, just don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree that, rights issues could be, if you were doing like if it was a Criterion style company, I guess. But there's just so much now that's being put out, like, I feel like there is a market for that kind of stuff. Like, even like Golden Ninja Video, I was like, ugh, I would just love to do like a Bruce Lee disc, a Bruce Lee disc, just like dedicated this just to them.
Well, maybe you will one day.
Yeah, maybe we will one day. Yeah. Fingers crossed. So, when will be the next time that you venture out onto the German website again to drop a payment of rent to grab discs?
Well, I mean, since doing it, I bought one on eBay. It's that one. I think you have it too. It's that one like. Oh fuck! I forget what the movie's called. It's that one, the yellow box on the far left there on your shelf. You know, the one with like the three ladies, the Shaw Brothers movie. Fucking hell, I forget what it's called. But what matters.
You know the German title.
Yeah. What matters is it has Dana, the Hong Kong sexbot actress Dana. Everyone loves her from The Image of Bruce Lee,
and that's why you need to own it.
Yes.